What a do, skibbity boo, it's your boy Shiny B Gaming, and today we're going to be going over Tiamat's kit, and oh my goodness, Tiamat has 10 abilities. So let's go ahead and jump into her kit. Grounding Dive. If you're in the flying stance and you use your 3, this is how you're going to enter your ground stance. Tiamat's going to dive into the fight, landing on all fours, dealing damage and switching to her ground stance. This ability also provides Tiamat with 1 Hardened Scale. It's going to deal 40 damage at level 1, 200 damage at level 5, plus 40% of your magical power. The cooldown is also a skill and cooldown. It's going to be 22 seconds at level 1, 14 seconds at level 5. Rising Flight. This is Tiamat's 3rd ability in her ground stance. Tiamat rears up, sending out a blast of energy, dealing damage to enemies and sending herself backwards as she returns to her flying stance. It's going to have a cooldown of 22 seconds at level 1, 14 seconds at level 5. Tiamat's passive, Death Begets Life. While in flying stance, Tiamat gains health from nearby allies and enemy deaths, less from minions. In ground stance, she gains up to 5 Hardened Scales, damage mitigation that breaks after a certain amount of damage is taken. Normal minions do not provide Hardened Scales. She's going to get a large heal. It's going to be 40 plus 8 per level. A small heal is 5 plus 0.5 per level. And the scale mitigation is 60%. 60% damage mitigation is pretty ridiculous. The shield or scale value is going to be 50 plus 10 per level. Primordial Onslaught. This is Tiamat's flying 1. Tiamat gathers power, allowing her to fire orbs of energy at the end of the channel. Each orb damages enemies and stops on enemy gods. Hitting the same enemy deals 15% less damage each time, to a minimum of 70% reduction. This ability can fire additional projectiles at ranks 3 and ranks 5. It's going to deal 60 damage at level 1, 100 damage at level 5, plus 55% of your magical power. It's going to have a 10-second cooldown. I think this is going to be your main form of clear in the early game, maybe even the late game. It looks like a really cool ability. You can see the amount of channeling going on her back, that back animation. Ruination. This is Tiamat's flying stance 2. Tiamat creates an energy field dealing low damage to enemies in the entire area, and then larger amounts of damage in the inner area. The inner area of the field also stuns enemies for a short duration. The outer area damage is going to be 40 damage at level 1, 100 damage at level 5, plus 30% of your magical power. The inner damage is going to be 60 at level 1, 200 at level 5, and then 40% of your magical power. The stun is going to be 1 second, and then this has a scaling cooldown. So at level 1, it's going to be a 16-second cooldown. Then at level 5, it's going to be a 12-second cooldown. Summon Serpents. This can be used when Tiamat is flying, she's holding her ultimate, and then she can press another ability. Tiamat places a pit of creation which spawns serpents of Tiamat that act like minions, traveling down lanes attacking nearby enemies. 2 serpents spawn every 10 seconds, and the deployable creates 3 waves before disappearing. Enemies hit by the serpents have their damage done reduced. Enemies can also stand on the pit to destroy it early. It's going to deal 10 damage plus 8% of your magical power. It's going to have 10% damage reduction at level 1, 30% damage reduction at level 5. It has 2 hit points. It's going to be 1 hit point per an enemy god ability or attack, and then 5 hits for minions to cause it to lose a hit point. It's going to have a 46-second cooldown at level 1 and a 30-second cooldown at level 5. One cool thing to note is that the serpents don't have a lifetime timer. The serpents that respawn in mid are still attacking the Odin. They're going to live forever until they lose their 2 health points. Summon Bees. This is if Tiamat is in her flying form, using her summoning form, and her 2. Tiamat calls forth Karasaku, who stands guard at the target location. If an enemy god comes too close, he charges, slows, and attacks them. The slow is going to be 80% for 1 second. The health is going to be 250 health plus 100 per level, and the lifetime is going to be 30 seconds. This also has a really long cooldown of 46 seconds at level 1 and 30 seconds at level 5. Summon Storm. If Tiamat is in her flying stance and then also in her summoning stance, this is the 3rd ability in the summoning stance. Tiamat calls the power of Umu Debubutu, conjuring a violent storm that follows enemies before knocking them upward and dissipating. Consume. This is where things get a little bit spicy. So in her ground stance, this is her 1. Tiamat fires a cone dealing damage and slowing enemies hit. Minions, large monsters, or buff holders hit under the health threshold are executed. Tiamat can immediately consume her serpent and beast pets to provide a hardened scale. When Tiamat consumes a buff holder, she gains their buff while the original can still be picked up by allies. This allows Tiamat to pick up a second buff as well. Tiamat can only have 1 consumed and 1 regular buff at a time. The slow is going to be 25% for 1.5 seconds, and the execution threshold is going to be 30% health at level 1, 50% health at level 5, and then the cooldown is 12 seconds at level 1, 8 seconds at level 5. As you can see here, Tiamat was able to suck in the red monster to get the red buff, and then there was a red buff on the ground. So now the devs are attacking the purple buff. Tiamat is going to be able to not get the purple buff on the second consume, but then pick up the purple buff and get 2 buffs. I think this is an absolutely fantastic mechanic. It should open up some pretty interesting gameplay. Tiamat can also use Consume to consume some minions to gain stacks on her passive. You can see the snakes being spawned and then Tiamat consuming them with her 1, and then she's gaining stacks on her passive, the 60% damage mitigation for a scale. Outburst. This is Tiamat's 2 in her ground stance. Tiamat slams the ground, creating seismic rifts that erupt in succession in front of her, damaging and knocking up enemies. It's going to have a 14-second cooldown at level 1 and a 10-second cooldown at level 5. Tempest of Undoing. This is Tiamat's ultimate in her ground stance. Tiamat causes a celestial outburst around her, dealing initial damage and damage over time effect to nearby enemies. Tiamat also gains 1 hardened scale per enemy god hit. Tiamat has 10 abilities, which I think means that there's going to be quite a large learning curve on when to use the combos and what the combos are. I think the fact that she can consume a buff, leave a buff for a teammate, and then pick up another buff is a very cool mechanic. I also noticed that a lot of Tiamat's abilities have a cooldown scale, meaning that as you level them up, the cooldown gets shorter and you can use them more often. I believe the PTS is coming out this Friday, and Tiamat is coming out on the 23rd, the week of the 23rd. Well, that is going to be the end of this video. If you feel like you learned anything at all, check out the channel and subscribe for more content. I upload Smite videos every single day, and if that is something you are interested in, be sure to subscribe. Thank you for stopping by. I hope you have a great day. I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.